I'm big,
And I'm surly.
and I have a mustache now.
Yeah. See, I call that the pedo stash. And he disagrees. I think we
Why
should have a
do our
vote.
mustache, Mr. McFeely?
What?
I counteract your pedo stash argument with Mr. McFeely. Mr.
What's
McFeely
Mr.
was
McFeely?
Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
Okay. And he
Mr. Rogers' neighborhood had a fellow named Mr. McFeely who was the speedy delivery man. He wore this nice blue suit, had a little blue hat, had a great mustache. He brought your packages that you needed to have the fun time with Mr. Rogers.
The fun time with Mr. Rogers.
Dude, don't even.
I know.
You want to get fucking canceled. Imply that Mr. Rogers was a pedophile. Because
that was a joke. Get some humor, guys.
There is no way the world would not slap us down for implying Mr. Rogers was a pedophile. And by extension, Mr. McFeely, no pedophile. Now, that weird show that was on at the same time in the mid 80s that had like the mannequin that came to life and the puppet that was a train conductor, but for some reason lived inside an department store. That puppet's mustache, pretty creepy.
I just don't know if we want the mustache to come back as a fashion accessory.
Why not? It is it's like a cross that I bear. Yeah.
Health and hygiene.
It's like a cross
reasons,
that I bear. Like I was eating a sandwich yesterday and my mustache is long enough. It was literally going in my mouth when I took a bite. And that's super annoying. But you know how you solve that problem? You get fancy and you get mustache wax. And then you go, For those of you not watching the video, that is the sound that accompanies the twisting and twirling of mustache.
Do you have mustache wax?
I do have mustache wax.
Fair play. To each
I am wearing a $90 cardigan that I got for $15. And I think I also spent $15 on that mustache wax.
Priorities.
Hey, man, bargain hunting when you're poor.
Yeah.
You go to the outlet mall when you're a fat poor guy and you find something like a nice cardigan, super discounted, because some other fat guy decided he didn't want it. There's not a lot. I can't go to the local Shonky Shack and get clothing. There aren't enough big people. Big people hold on to our clothes. We hold on to our clothes.
Fair enough.
They're not like you find something reasonably fashionable as a fat guy, you keep it.
Is America's obesity rate still the highest in the world?
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, Australia and Canada
where I
live. Crying.
Certainly where I live. Yeah, I have read recently that Australia's obesity rates were not great.
They were getting pretty rough over in South Korea when we were living there too.
Yeah, there were some husky Korean kids, but a
lot of husky.
Some of us have issues with food. For me, it's directly related to childhood trauma.
But that's a conversation for another day. But this time I'm gonna hijack that and go away from childhood trauma. Kick it out. Go out the fucking door. We don't have time for you today.
You're gonna abuse the childhood trauma the way the childhood trauma abused me.
There we go. All right, so this season is a theme rather than numbered. So again, this season is why mobilization and general strikes are the political voice of the voiceless in our democracies. To recap the first 4 episodes, episode 1 was about the housing gap. 40% of people can't afford to basically live. Episode 2 was the poverty trap, and that is where social mobility over the last 50 years has deteriorated, and most people are going into debt just to get the basic necessities of life. We did escaping the poverty trap, which is basically mass mobilization, intense pressure on government and business, and really nothing else works. And the last episode we did was on civility and the kind of absurdity and abusive nature of the stance that somebody we have oppressed, crippled, traumatized, abused, marginalized owes us civility while trying to get their needs met at this point in history. And that's a difficult conversation to have. Most people want activists to be polite but not disruptive. Whereas in history, what works is highly disruptive.
And I've been thinking about this since we recorded the episode. And I
Okay.
think part of the problem is the fear and potentially the correct fear that in the US we have such our hyper individualistic nature actually makes us more prone to mob violence than if we were a more collectivist country. And so people fear the reaction of a protest turning into a mob.
Well, I mean, who was it? JFK said if you take away the
The peaceful right to protest, you guarantee violent protest, something along those
a way
lines.
to take away the peaceful protest is to make it powerless. And that is what has happened since the 1950s onward with the slow destruction of the labor power through various legislation and other things, is that erosion.
People used to respect a picket line.
Yeah.
People used to acknowledge a picket line. And I don't know that we reported on this in the last episode, but in Milan, Illinois, a John Deere employee was actually hit while on the picket line. That like people you slow down for a picket line the way you pull over for fire trucks or an ambulance or a funeral.
Yeah.
Like you're supposed to defer to those people because they're out there, because wages getting better at those factories means wages get better for all of us. That's one of the things that we've been dancing around in these discussions is the idea of wage depression. When you have a large scale employer come in and make it so that they're willing to hire a large number of people, but at a depressed wage, what that eventually does is depress the wages in the community in which it operates. That's what Walmart did to America. It came in and set, if minimum wage was $7.25, Walmart set wages at $8 initially, which sounded, oh, this is a little bit better than I'll make at the local store. They steal all the staff. But then 2 years later, wages are still $8. 5 years later, wages are still $8.
I think it's 2007 or 2008 or something for you guys now that your federal minimum wage hasn't gone up from like $7.25 or something stupid.
No, it's different in every state because not every state recognizes the federal minimum wage. So when was the federal minimum wage? Because I'm going to say it was 97. Oh, July 2009. Okay. That's when it went to 7.25.
Yeah. There we go. 2009.
I haven't been willing to work for a minimum wage for a long time.
But I mean, the minimum wage, this is the idea. It's like this comes into our topic of exploitation today. And what does exploitation mean and how does exploitation work? And I mean, a brief history of labor, literally the Coles notes, 1800s, people started grouping up in cities. They learned that ape together strong, ape alone weak. Decades later, the oligarchies were so pushed to such an edge of disruption that they were willing to choose world wars over compromises with the working class. After World War II, because frankly, World War I was a bonanza for the rich people. They basically walked into World War II going, this will pick up the economy, let's do this, essentially. And World War II ended up with the largest destruction of capital in history. And that was the first time ever where working class people had real power. And you see that in the aftermath of World War II, where the wages are high, there's a functional middle class. But we're now in the period of time where capital has reaccumulated and wages are never going to get you out of your class anymore. Wages, because capital is worth so much more, and the ability to accumulate capital is now going to be increasingly restricted going forward because growth will slow down as capital reaches a certain threshold. And that's what we
Some
see
people
right
are
now.
okay with that.
We have a divergence of capital in the US, not we, you guys, in the US, that is currently worse than pre-revolution France.
Yep, the guillotines are getting sharpened.
And this is the thing. America is now the world's first rich country filled with poor people. Most Americans are now poor. I mean, what is it? 80% of the country was estimated because of the infrastructure degradation to be quantifiable as third world at this point. I mean, all the money going, this is the way it works. You can have billionaires or you can have nice things for your country, but you can't have both. Doesn't work that way.
I saw a great meme the other day where Elon Musk texted, I'm going to make sure that humanity survives by getting us to Mars.
Yeah,
And someone responded just by saying, can you just pay your taxes, please?
Yeah, right. Like,
and that I thought it was particularly funny because the person who's like deriding Elon Musk is still nice. They say please.
Yeah. When quite frankly, this guy is worse than smog. Teeth. Oh, I got bad teeth. Sorry, that was probably a really scary view. Don't rewind.
That was super frightening. That was terrifying. That's
anyway,
like finding the sheep's head in the sheep's head soup.
But yeah, I think Musk is just his disconnect from reality.
Yeah.
Is such that he doesn't understand that one, no Earth, no Mars. It really is that fucking simple. If we lose our base of if we lose our home base, our odds of survival go to close to zero, if not that's fucking close to zero, I would say. Mars would have to be utterly terraformed. Its air is poisonous. Its ground is poisonous, from what I understand, with chemicals. Like, it's not going to be able to sustain itself for hundreds of years of terraforming. So, I mean, this guy's in fucking La La Land. He read way too many science fiction novels, and as a science fiction enthusiast, I can really appreciate where he's coming from. But we have to fix this place if we want to survive out there with any real statistical probability.
Do you think he read the Mars Quintet or Quartet?
I don't know.
And thinks that like it's going to go red Mars to blue Mars. He thinks that Martians are going to invent longevity medications. And so that's.
Yeah. He is really.
He's also a person who has claimed that he has Asperger's syndrome, which means his toes are in the spectrum, at least to some degree, who was raised in privilege.
Yeah, this is a guy whose basically riches were derived from emerald apartheid, South African apartheid emeralds, from my understanding. So I mean, this is like fucking gold spoon shoved up the ass material out the gate.
Yeah. So someone whose understanding of reality is a couple degrees off from quote unquote normal,
Yeah.
raised in opulence,
Yeah.
is going to think that
I
well,
mean, what? Sorry, was
it,
that who was that? Frenchie.
I
It's
don't
Fred.
know
You
if
remember
it's
Frenchie? Who
fair.
the fuck was
No, I
Frenchie? What
do
is that
not
from?
remember
There was
Frenchie.
someone who had a sock puppet called Frenchie. If anybody can remember this, comments. We will be reading these. We'd like to see your comments. And at this point, because I've clearly forgotten my duty in the intro, is click like, share, do all that fine stuff, please, and thank you, and whatever it is that people do on these platforms. But back to our point, Elon Musk, I don't know what the wages he pays are like, but I don't think, like, this is a guy who's like whining about getting a billionaire tax. And he's like, you guys will have to pay taxes too. And it's like, most people are bleeding out their fucking asses in taxes already, you fucking pampered little baby.
Well,
Like,
we don't have the average person doesn't have the resources to defraud the government.
no, let alone get billions in dollars from funding from them out of fucking taxpayer dollars. I
Well,
don't know.
that's one of the great lies about the quote unquote free market, is that it's really, with a neoliberal foundation, it's designed to funnel our money to the wealthy.
Yeah. And why is that?
Because the wealthy have the power and they set the system up that way.
Yeah. But that's not necessarily true. But this is going back to the idea when capital started to get stronger than wages, and that occurred around the 70s, 80s as well, and around the time where America went from a surplus country to a deficit country, neoliberalism came to light. Which neoliberalism, to recap, is the idea that if we give all of our money to the worst of all people in our society, that everybody will somehow benefit.
If we give all our money to the wealthy, that they will create jobs.
Worst of all people. Man, you don't make $1 billion by being a nice guy. Look at Bezos. The dude is fucking like this guy would be like, if Bezos could, he like, if you picture this in like fucking Oliver Twist times, you know, the guy with the black hat who runs the orphanage houses, who like work master and whips little children to make as much money as he can. That is Bezos. Bezos has fucking done as much as he can to abuse the privileges he has been granted.
I'm surprised no one has taken a picture of Jeff Bezos and just painted clown makeup on it. Because Bezos sounds like a great clown name. I'm Bezos the Clown.
Yeah.
I'm here to rob your parents.
There you go.
Kids, can you say poverty?
Right? Oh, so bad. But like, this is the thing, like between him and Walmart, fucking I would say between Bezos and Walmart,
Bezos,
you have most of the
Walmart
employment
has
in
become the
America.
good guy.
No,
Walmart
they're
has
both
become
no,
the
they
good
haven't.
guy. At least in my community, Walmart is now paying $18 to $25 an hour to start. Now, what that actually means when they advertise $18 to $25 an hour to start, it's $18, maybe, or it's $17.50, and after 90 days you get bumped up to $18.
Yeah.
But in this
That's
community, the only other thing that
PR.
pays,
They know they're fucked if they don't zip up.
the only thing that pays anywhere close to as well is the meatpacking plant, which is incredibly physically grinding.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people can do it for like 4 to 5 years and then their bodies just shit out and they have to go find another job. Well, yeah, like it's repetitive.
Yeah.
Pull, slice, pull, slice, pull, slice. Like, you do one part of the butchery over and over and over again. So you get like
that's where
rotator cuff injury. In America, the unions have been gutted, so they're not there to back the employees effectively.
Yeah, you guys are a lot worse
proportionally the employment is with immigrants, because they're bringing in refugees from other countries to come and work at the factories. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been great for the restaurant scene, but it has been terrible for the people that actually have to do the work.
Yeah. And this is actually brings us back to the exploitation idea. So before we move more fully into that, I've got a quote from John Maynard Keynes. Capitalism is the astonishing belief that the nastiest motives of the nastiest men somehow or other work for the best results in the best of all possible worlds. That's a rough one. So how does exploitation work? Now, most people are being exploited in your country and in my country to one degree or another at this point. It was a bit better in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, but it has gotten monumentally worse from steadily and progressively since then. So in Canada, we have mastered the art of destroying labor through the use of two things: exporting our production. This means under neoliberalism and free trade, we stopped making our own things and started importing them from other countries where Canadians could own corporations or stuff like that, produce them at a lower cost, bring them in and sell them at a profit. Or we have an influx, which is where we get temporary laborers who come in to fill a niche need. And these people are very easy to exploit and often are, with visas being ripped up if they try to stand up for their human rights, wages being withheld, also long work hours. These temporary workers system is, from what I can tell, heavily abused within Canada. We'll actually be providing a link to a video from a news outlet called The Breach, which is in Canada, that looks into this issue. And when we bring in these people the people who are capitalists, people with large sums of money who can bring in workers like this, when they bring in these workers, they're able to not just abuse these people for increased profit, they're able to drive down the value of labor for everybody else in Canada. And it is one of the ways, and Canada is actually like probably one of the best at this. That's one of the reasons we don't have the immigration problems that the US has, is because our temporary worker system brings in the people we need, so we don't rely on illegal immigrants. Now,
now, just one point. It doesn't just drive down the wages.
Mm-hmm.
It drives down the standards of behavior for employers.
Mm-hmm.
And creates a situation whereby one employer looks at this employer that can abuse its workers and says, hey, wait a second, why can't I abuse my workers? Well, your workers are actually Canadian citizens. So what? I want to abuse my workers too.
And we have that with work Bezos. Environments.
There is right now, there's a number of cases against Amazon because Amazon is guilty of wage theft, apparently, according to the claims by the people who have filed these cases, is that Amazon is withholding pay from employees.
Why does it not surprise me that he is just not like that he is just the dirtiest motherfucker on the face of the earth? Like, this guy is like quintessential fucking villain in a black hat bullshit.
I don't know that can even be laid at Bezos's feet. What can be laid at Bezos's feet, and that's what it is, right? Is that he says save as much money as possible from the workforce, treat them like robots, treat them like shit. And that creates an environment whereby his managers think, well, wait a second, these are just robots. They're not worth consideration. Yeah, it got like suddenly dark there.
Someone behind a cloud.
The acceptable behavior we have to hold towards these people just slowly erodes and erodes to the point where these managers are surprised when they find out they've broken the law because they aren't aware of the law and they don't think of the people that they're taking advantage of as
Industry
people.
standard is the term.
Yeah.
And this is actually a real problem that was first discovered in 1930 after the collapse of the stock market and the Great Depression was the first time that white collar crime actually became something. And it has been a slow, steady fight to actually enforce white collar crime since that period began. But when white collar criminals, I read this really interesting book called Why They Do It, which is on white collar criminals, and it's a bit apologetic. But the finding is that when they're caught, they never even thought they were doing anything wrong because it was such an ingrained behavior within the industry as a whole. And this is what we have to understand: is we don't have a rule of law. We have a rule for the people who are employees, and we have a rule for small businesses. And then after a certain level, shit just stops applying in real substantial ways. Small
Look at,
business is
if
not
you've
enough to
not
get you that
seen,
protection yet.
if you've not seen The Big Short, Adam McKay's movie about the financial crisis,
It's worth
look,
watching.
really, it's funny, it's informative, it is outrageous in the sense that I can't fucking believe none of these people went to prison, but none of those people went to prison. There's one country that sent their nefarious bankers to prison.
Iceland.
And it was Iceland.
Yeah.
And what happened in Iceland? Their economy has rebounded and they're doing quite well.
COVID hurt them, but COVID hurt everybody.
COVID hurt everybody. That's
yeah, there's really no way to look at it. We tolerate corruption in our societies at our own risk. And I mean, who it hurts are the people that these predator parasite class folks sort of prey on. I mean, if you want to be a billionaire, you have to abuse people and be willing to support abusing people. Elon Musk, I'm pretty sure, has got the same issues. He's very rich. He's made production. He's got sought tax breaks. I suspect that if we look into Elon Musk like Jeff Bezos has been looked at, we would probably find some pretty fucking shady shit too.
He certainly didn't want his Tesla factories to unionize, and I truly don't understand the attitude of not wanting a union.
The thing about it is unions have been shit talked, and that is the way that that's how we've been able to get to this level of exploitation. And before we continue, I'm just going to say one more point on the exploitation. We talked about the use of immigration, we've talked about the use of exporting production, but there is also one other factor, and that's the devaluing of the labor unions and the devaluing of labor, so that in periods of scarcity, the workers did not gain wages while the upper class continues to make off like bandits. So we effectively, since the 1980s, we have seen staggering growth for the top 1%, and we have seen the gradual destruction of the middle class and the honestly, the stagnation of wages in the middle and lower class. Literally in the lowest class, it's actually decreased, so that where one person could raise a family in the 1970s, two people working full time are barely making ends meet.
I think we need another Alex moment. So pause with me just here. Audience, I'm talking directly to you. You can see my sincerity and my mustache. Yeah. You're never going to be a member of the 1%. You're never going to be so rich the laws don't apply to you. It's just not going to happen. It's this isn't an insult to you, because
The game
I'm
is
never
rigged.
going to be that person either.
Hmm.
We're fucked. We were not born into it. We did not have the one great idea at just the right time with just the right amount of ambition to make it happen like Bezos.
With the right amount of money backing and whatnot.
Sure.
Because that was all with other people's money that he was able to get.
Yeah, he was a manipulative little shit, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not willing to be a manipulative little shit, you're
You're not.
never going to get there, audience. And so you have to make a stand. You have to draw a line in the sand. You have to change the way things are working. And the only way you can do that is to organize, is to employ solidarity. If you live in a city where there are strikers, go help those strikers if you can. I mean, maybe you can't afford it. Maybe just call them and tell them you support it, or drive by the picket lines and honk.
Or
That's
stop and talk
how,
with them if you're walking
yeah,
past.
like engage in the system. Most of us, for me,
raise your voice on social media.
I've got a strike happening right now where I work, and if it was feasible for me to not purchase the products of the company, I mean, it's John Deere, so yes, I will not go buy a tractor. I promise. But when it's like Nabisco, and Nabisco makes Oreos, don't buy Oreos.
Yeah.
Just go without Oreos. If the people that make Oreos are scumbags, doesn't that make Oreos taste a little bit worse? They're delicious.
Child labor.
Well, there's very few of these big conglomerate companies don't have some shit on their face.
Which is why shopping local, where you can get fresh produce. Fuck these like processed scumfucks.
But come on, audience. We're the ones who can change things. Go vote, go protest, go organize, go get involved in
letters,
local social organizations. Yeah, harass your elected officials. I mean, it's not going to do a lot. They're going to ignore most of what you say. But if you can slowly build an ever increasing group of people, and maybe what we need are social unions.
It's got to be a community
what we need
thing.
Are groups, voter blocks that come together and say, I'm going to vote this way. And you get somebody organizes and gets 1,000 of those people. Well, if you're the one person, we as a group of 1,000 people are contacting your local senator, then they're going to start listening.
And the thing about this is this is why we have been allowed to deteriorate this much, is because the harder off people are, the harder is these sorts of actions are. We have people working 60 to 80 hours a week just to make ends meet.
Yep.
And I mean,
with kids,
people with
and
kids,
pets, and
so I mean, poverty,
household chores that they're responsible for. Because I'm a single adult. So I have to take care of everything for myself. I almost think it's easier when you're a family, because especially once you have older kids, because you can put those kids to work. They have to help maintain the family structure.
But I mean, this is the thing we have to acknowledge right now, is that most people can't really put in the time that is required to actually shift things. So how we push things forward without everything breaking apart. I mean, this is the problem is things are getting so bad, we either are going to have to mobilize and fix it, or we're risking violent mobs. And I mean, it's already happened in the US. Like, I don't give a fuck what people are saying. January 6th was premeditated violence. I mean, that's the thing that none of the Black Lives Matters protests or Antifa protests have is premeditated violence. Some looters
And a
broke
lot of
out
the instances of people getting out of line at those protests
were
were
fucking,
agent provocateurs.
or just assholes trying to start shit from the other side. Like there was a bunch of right folks. And this is the thing is we need to drop this language of right versus left, because when it comes to exploitation, making classes of workers and having them fight over the crumbs is how this stuff progresses. So, I mean, today we brought up the use of immigrant workers and how they're abused to devalue labor here and the resulting problems we've had with people being able to even make living wages in my own country and in yours as well, from what I can see, is that like it's not going, as long as people are at each other's throats, there is going to be no progress. This is not about identity, this is about survival. And I mean, and I can understand like where there's the identity part of it is still going to be part of this, but in the long run, if people want better for everybody, they're going to have to cover each other's asses. These have to be community led fights. When the community was what our government set out to destroy and have destroyed between what's happened over the last few decades.
And if you can't, because you're too busy,
Mm.
be the organizer, get out there and spend a little bit of time looking for an organizer who's
And
already
they
doing what
exist.
you're interested in.
And they exist. I mean, that's the other thing about this is like we need
Part of the
general.
problem with the efforts on the quote unquote left, which or progressive or whatever you want to call it, I call it rational. Uh, but those folks often get irrational because it's a lot of, in my experience doing political organizing and social organizing, you get a lot of tin pot dictators who want to be in charge of the organization. If they're willing to do the work, let them be. Let them feel like they're in charge. Who cares if you share the same goals? And they need to feel like they're important. Let them feel important. Make them feel important. Tell them they're doing a good job.
Yeah. I mean, that's their own insecurities coming through.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of people who are out there trying to make the world a better place as a result of trauma or damage they've experienced themselves, and they don't want to see anybody else have to go through.
Yeah. You see this in the helping profession a lot, people who are not able to take care of their own needs and focus outside of themselves. And I was watching a show by Gabor Mate, When the Body Says No, and these sorts of personalities actually have a higher incident rate of cancers and autoimmune disorders.
So between smoking and doing what I do for a job, I'm definitely getting cancer.
Well, I mean, when you know the risks, you can take the steps to mitigate the problems.
Yeah, I did mention I smoked, didn't I?
Yeah, I quit.
I figure I'm just on a really sweet plane ride, slow, that's at this trajectory.
Well, it's this trajectory until it's this trajectory.
Eh,
Anyway, I'm not going to give you a hard time. So,
should have died as a baby. It's all gold.
I say 8 months old is when I would have died without modern medicine.
Yeah, me too.
But
So
are we coming to the end? Should we
I don't know. I guess we should wrap it up. It's been about 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
In
So
that case,
apparently it's my turn to now say like, share, subscribe. We're gonna have another audience moment here. Hi guys, like, share, and subscribe, and look for my upcoming ASMR videos where I talk like this, make the top of your head tingle. Oh yeah. I'll also be cutting up soap and possibly the flesh of animals. How's that for a disturbing ASMR video? Just the sound of a knife through a big chunk of meat. Meat.
And now for something completely different.
I've been big.
And I've been surly. Take care.